Hey, I got to talk to you about Mean Gene. I mean, this is not the reason I wanted to reach out to you, Bill Goldberg, but it was you can imagine with Mean Gene here in Detroit. I was thinking about this. Our connection with WrestleMania 3, and I was watching and I remember when they had the attendance record. Do you know who they brought into the ring to announce it? Mean Gene, of course.
He has been throughout wrestling history the voice, period. And when I posted that on Twitter that he's got a long history with the Goldberg family, dude, I mean, a lot of people don't know it, but with my brothers going to school in Minnesota, obviously they're in the middle of the hotbed of the frickin' wrestling back in the day. And my brother's known Mean Gene since like the late 60s. And so he's been a friend of the family. I mean, Flair was my brother's roommate at Minnesota, right. One of them. And I mean, he's Mean Gene. I knew Mean Gene on a personal level before I knew him on a professional level.
So then what was it like for you to finally be in the ring with Mean Gene?
He was someone that I did not have to question as far as his direction. At that time in my life when I was a ball of clay that was basically molded by everybody that I had any connection with or any history with anytime I was in the ring, I was at their disposal. And in the beginning, you know, because I was out of my element and I relied upon a lot of people to point me in a direction. And he was one of the few guys that you'd never question if there's a motive. He's always going to talk to you and advise you as if he's a family member. And that's how I looked at him.
So he gave, I remember hearing an interview with Gene once that he gave a lot, like you said, a lot of feedback to the other wrestlers, would really talk with them and say, okay, maybe you don't want to go this way. Like some people said that, you know, he was the one that kind of caught Austin early with the whole beer drinking thing and said, that's who you are. Why don't you be that guy?
I don't doubt that at all. It sounds exactly like him. And, you know, it's of the opinion that you're an extension. The best character performances are an extension of your true personality.
So how much of that, it always goes back to the same question then. Like you and him, the one video I was watching with Flair leading up to the whole thing, the way that both of you interacted with Flair's family and eventually Rick itself, how much of that, you know where you're going, you just don't know how you're going to get there? Is that pretty much the way it works?
Yeah. I mean, that's basically it. Both of those guys, I mean, just like I said, I had such a family tie with them before I even considered becoming a wrestler. It's just a different relationship. It provided a sense of security for me in the fear of the unknown when I, you know, at 30 years old or however old I was, jumped into something I had absolutely no idea about.
So when you were thinking about it, Bill, like I guess that was kind of like just what you said. I mean, you had someone there that you could see. Anyone who goes to a new job or even, my God, a new profession, when you can walk in the room or walk in the building and know somebody there, that's got to be just a comfort zone or at least an anchor for you.
Another instance is, you know, my relationship with Jim Ross throughout high school, and then I called him. He was the first person I called to get some kind of an in into wrestling once I chose that profession.
I never knew that. Really? So you knew Ross just from football in high school? How did you know him then?
Man, Ross sent me up. I had a meeting with Vince. There's a lot of shit people don't know. I met with Vince straight out of football and you know, went up there. I was like, this is a little much for me right now. If I'm jumping into something I have no idea about, I don't think that moving to New York and, you know, having these guys in complete control of my life is the smartest thing or the most secure thing to do right now. Let me just stay around my Atlanta area where all the guys that I know and, you know, it's just familiarity.
So how far down the road were you with Vince then?
Meaning, what do you mean? I mean, I had like, one meeting. Literally.
Okay, so you had a meeting.
I flew.
Okay.
I flew up there. I sat down. I realized I didn't have my agent with me. The only agent I had was my football agent. And I had no idea about anything. And that's when the red light went off. And then I went in there, and it was Vince and freaking, I just, yeah.
So Ross, did Ross come up with her with you, or?
Yeah, Jim. It was Jim and Vince, and they threw this whole spiel out. You know, Jim gave him my background, and he offered me some kind of developmental deal, and then I flew back home and called Bischoff. And that's a totally different story. I mean, that's another story. That's a book in itself. In addition to. Yeah, so within 24 hours, I signed at WCW and all that kind of stuff.
Never knew that. Going back to Mean Gene, Bill, it's cool though, man. I love these stuff. These stories you tell us. We always learn something new every time we talk, man. The Mean Gene stuff from WrestleMania 3, the interviews during the matches, the ones with Andre the Giant, and him and Heenan. It's so funny how he was so. Andre the Giant seemed to have something about Mean Gene where he just loved messing with him.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you know, in all honesty, there was no one. Well, if you were gregarious, if you were the guy who I loved messing with him was Hennig. I mean, obviously Hennig's going to mess with him. Everybody messed with him because he was one of the boys. He was one of the elder statesmen. He was the guy who paved the way for guys like me. You know, I mean, there's so many things that the embryonic leaders of this business have done for guys such as myself. It's you just can't sit and document it. It's just, you got to sit in awe thinking of the ground that he paved.
Yeah, and like you said, Bill, though, but this is closer to you. I mean, with the Minnesota connection and with the Gagne camp and all that stuff, and what your family, how long he's part of your life for what, 40 years? 30 years?
Yeah, my entire life.
Your entire life.
When I was going up to, I mean, ever since I had the memory of going to freaking frigid football games in Minnesota when my brother played for Murray Warmath, and they played outside, and I mean, I just remember, yeah, I mean, forever. There's always an indelible memory of Mean Gene. I mean, I've just heard about him for my entire life through my brothers.
That's us. Like to me, the other one too was for me as a wrestling fan growing up, he was the guy. It wasn't a legitimate match unless Mean Gene interviewed him before or after. It wasn't legitimate unless he talked to him.
He was like the Michael Buffer of announcers. I mean, and I don't mean he. Or it might be even bigger than that. I don't know, but
I think so. Buffer. The thing about Buffer does. But
remember when Buffer did every big event there was before there was a Michael Buffer. Before his brother came out, he was the man. He did Jimmy Lennon's awesome, but he did every big badass event there was, and it wasn't big time unless he was calling it. And that's how I look at Mean Gene.
Yeah, same thing. And I loved some of the Macho Man stuff. I always wondered who came up with the props, because there was like one where Macho Man's eating candy and dumping it on his head. And you remember that one? He came out like he was barking about Tito Santana, and he's like going, I could dump this candy on your head, Mean Gene, but I won't. I'll dump it on my own head. And you're like, who the hell thinks of that?
It could have been any of them. That's the funny thing, because it could have been one, but it could just as easily have been the other one, because the creative minds of some of these people who've been in the business, unbelievable, especially the old school guys. I mean, there obviously is a train of thought that they follow, but it's classic. It truly is, and it's timeless. Because it still works today.
50 years from now, there will be a YouTube or whatever the hell we'll call it, and you will sit down and you will go down a rabbit hole and watch videos of Mean Gene interviewing wrestlers. You just will.
Because it's the basics, it's the reality, it's it's what wrestling in its infant state truly is. And every single wrestling match is a derivative of what they did. I mean, they were simplistic in their ideas, and hey, good versus evil, period, end of story. I mean, they used the simple equation and it worked every time. It was amazing.
Well, look at your character. Goldberg, the character, was in its simplest form. You were Charles Bronson in the wrestling ring. You were the badass who didn't say a lot, but would just destroy everyone.
Mike Tyson in wrestling.
There it is. Absolutely, man. All right, Bill, I know you're running all over the place, man, and I appreciate the time talking about Mean Gene. You got to get back here, man. We got a bunch of new Mustangs to go take a peek at. Some of the 350s and the Shelby 500s.
Yeah, man, I need to compare them against the Red Eye.
Oh, that's true. What are you driving now? Are you driving the Demon or are you running a Red Eye?
I'm driving my Red Eye right now.
You show off. Yeah, we could do that in Michigan. Well, I don't know. Mark Trossel says he still drives his with snow tires.
Well, yeah, hey, man, it's the Red Eye is the perfect blend of everything they've come out with to now in one package, because I mean, I love it. Because I want to drive that Demon every day. It just doesn't want to turn, obviously.
Right.
And now that's rectified. It doesn't float. It eats corners up. I got to put some different tires on it. I've got headers going on it and all kind of different things. But, I mean, the car is, talk about a grand touring car. Yeah, now let's be realistic. Not everybody's going to break out $95,000, in full trim to buy this car. But in the end, I think that's what makes it kind of cool. It's more expensive than the Demon was. It's one hell of a nasty car that people are going to get killed in. And that's going to limit the amount of people buying this car, I believe.
Well, are you gonna keep it out of your hay bales like a Goodwood? You're gonna keep it safe?
Well, that's a race car, dude. That's what those things are built for. I mean, yeah, no shit, it's mine, and I'm not going to do anything like that with it. I've got my original Challenger Hellcat skinny tire car is down in Mooresville right now, and we're trying to put a package together with Dodge, and I'm going to road course this thing, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But it's just like that Bilstein.
Are you working with some of the petty guys, or who are you working with?
With what's his name? The dude who did the Bilstein car.
The name. It's late. Yeah, I know you're talking about. Well, get up here, man.
Conrad's its fabricator. He's my buddy, but
okay.
Kevin Wesley.
Well, get up here. I know you were here for Roadkill Nights, but it was pretty funny. You were a rock star in it, dude. Everybody wanted a piece of you.
Yeah, it was the first time I ever been up there, man. It was fun. That was a blast. I don't think I'm ever going to miss another one of those.
It's crazy, isn't it? And these people, man, every year somebody blows their brakes out in an eighth of a mile. It's, you think about it, the balls you got to put it to the floor in an eighth of a mile and then get it to stop.
Yeah, thank God those Hellcats have good brakes on them.
Yeah, they do. All right, brother. Well, be well, man. Thanks for the time about Mean Gene, and get up here, man. We'll see you here.
You got it. Be good, partner.
Right.
Happy 2019.
You got it. Thanks, Bill.